Hello everybody, you're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host Dane Cobain. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhyolite Zone to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for a weekly album review. We play local, unsigned and or independent music, and we probably do some other stuff that I've forgotten as well. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We're repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on iTunes, Spotify, the Wickham Sound Listen Again, anywhere else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a rating as well, because one of my guests was like, you should get people to leave ratings, so that is now going into my spiel. You can also email me here at the studio by dropping me a line on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So this week we are going to be chatting to author Dana Deltrum. She's written some books about comedians, our favourite comedians. But before we do that, we're going to head over to the Rhyolite Zone, and this is part 2 of Grilla Comes to Sesfjord, which is my story that is inspired by my time in Iceland. Sorry about my Icelandic, I don't speak the lingo. As she sang the final verse, she glanced up and around the room, her mind wandering back to the Word document on her laptop. Her gaze paused at the window for a second and moved on, but then she felt a horrible jolt in her gut and turned to look at the window again. She'd seen a face there. Or had she? Borjni wasn't so sure, especially after she'd taken a second look at the frame and seen nothing but the snow outside gathering on the glass like a cold mould. When she finished the song, Powders had her eyes closed, but Borjni knew her daughter well enough to know that she wasn't asleep. Wait there, baby. Mama will be back in just a minute. Okay. Borjni climbed up from the bed and walked over to the window, then took a proper look outside. She could feel the cold through the glass, and it started to steam up from the warmth of her breath. Still, the lights were low enough in Powders' room that she could see outside, and there was nothing unusual out there. There was nothing at all, except for a narrow dirt path that had been snowed over, and a distant flicker of light that was either the Aurora or the industrial farm on the other side of town. She sighed and returned to her perch at the bottom of Powders' bed, then started singing Sofur Unga Astin Min.
Sofur Unga Astin Min, Utir regnið grætur, Mamma geymir gullin þín, gamla legg og völuskrín, við skulum ekki vakum dimmar Það margt sem myrkrið veit, minn hugur þungur. Oft ég svartan sandinn leit, svíða grænan engirinn, í jöklinum hljóða dauða djúpar sprungur. Sofðu lengi, sofðu rótt, seint mun best að vakna, mæðan kenna mun þér fljótt, meðan hallar degi skjótt, að mennirnir elska missa grát og sakna.
This time she was barely halfway through when she saw the face at the window, and this time she was sure of it. It was ill-defined, especially with the condensation, and it was hard to be sure whether it belonged to a person or whether it was just pareidolia. It might just as easily have been a couple of knots in a tree. When she finished the song, she climbed back up and went over to the window. She had to wipe away the condensation on the sleeve of her shirt, and by the time that she looked outside, the face had disappeared again. But she had her suspicions. Borjni thought that Powders had fallen asleep, but there was only one way to be sure. And besides, she was still keeping an eye on the window. She sang Sofur to Born.
Sofa urtu börn á
By the time that she finished, Poldis was snoring with her thumb in her mouth and the face was back in the window. Borgny raced over, wiped the condensation from the glass and was confronted with the hellish visage of a nightmare fiend. The face had a boxer's pugnacious nose and a huge sagging jaw with two fangs protruding out above the jaw, curling upwards as though they were trying to pierce the jowled cheeks above them. The creature's teeth were black and rotting, a dentist's nightmare. It had two huge ears that were covered by its greasy black hair, and two heavy-set eyes that were yellowed and jaundiced. One of them was filmed over with a blind mist. Two gnarled horns rose out from its broad forehead. Borgny recognised the fiend immediately. It was Grilla the troll, the mother of the Yule lads and the eater of children. Grilla was nearly 8 feet tall and weighed more than a farmer's prize bull. She was dressed in an outfit made from hemp sacks and covered in a thick layer of snow that made her look like a festive sculpture from a child with a sick imagination. When Borgny made eye contact with her, Grilla leered back at her and then took off to her right, out of view of the window. "Anskotin," Borgny said. She'd read about Grilla, of course she had, when she'd been working on a second book, and she'd been raised on tales of the evil troll and her mischievous offspring, who came every Christmas. That meant that she knew exactly what to do, but it was a race against time. She started by dragging the curtains across the window, though she knew it wouldn't do any good. Then she rushed to the kitchen and opened the cupboard beneath the sink before rifling through the junk that she kept there because there was nowhere else to put it. It took her longer than she would have liked to find what she was looking for, but she eventually pulled out 5 black candles and a box of matches. There were no holders for the candles, but they had a pillar design and would stand up by themselves. She just hoped that the matches were dry. There was a heavy knock at the front door, sounding more like a gunshot than the impact of a hand against wood. Even if she hadn't seen the troll, the knock would have been disconcerting by itself, especially because she had few visitors and a functioning doorbell. The knock came again, and then a third time. It was slow, but it was also insistent, and it didn't stop. Her hands shaking, Borgny slid open the box of matches and withdrew one, then struck it against the touch paper. It flickered into life for the briefest of moments and then sputtered back out again. "Farutilunskotans." She lit another match, and that one stayed alight for a couple of seconds, which was long enough for her to light the first wick. Then she tossed the matches to one side and used the first candle to light the other 4. As soon as the 5th one caught light, the knocking stopped. For a couple of seconds, Borgny hardly dared to breathe. She counted to 10 beneath her breath. "Null," she murmured. "Ein, dvier, dvier, fjordir, fim, sechs, sjo, atta, nu, tiu." She breathed a sigh of relief and walked back through to Poldis's room to check on her. She was still asleep, still snoring, still sucking her thumb. Then there was a boom and a howl of wind, which shrieked through the house and brought the cold with it. Borgny whirled around just in time to see Grilla crouching to enter through the doorway. The door itself had almost been ripped from its hinges, and it had taken a chunk out of the plasterboard as the handle bashed against it. Grilla was huge, ugly, and terrifying. She was also carrying a burlap sack. "Boo," she said. Her voice had a rasp and a lisp to it, and sounded like a boulder rolling down a mountainside. Borgny backed away instinctively, then realised it was taking her into Poldis's room, which lit the flames of bravery within her. She took a hesitant step forward. "Grilla," she replied, "I thought the candles would have stopped you." "That's old magic," Grilla said dismissively, waving a huge gnarled hand and dislodging a framed photo from the wall. "What do you want from me, Grilla?" "I want your child." You can't have her. I must have her, Grilla said. Lapalo is hungry, and I'm going to take your child back to my cave in the Dimmu Borgia ice fields and make a stew for my husband, my sons, and the Yule Cat. If the old magic doesn't work, Borgny murmured, what about the new magic? What was that? Nothing, Borgny replied. Follow me, I'll take you to Paldus. But she didn't take Grilla to Paldus, leading her instead into the well-lit and well-stocked kitchen. She walked over to the fridge and opened the door, then started withdrawing everything that a hungry troll might need. She gave Grilla cold meats and blocks of cheese, including a huge wheel of Gudastur and a healthy amount of skyr. She also gave her some bread and some pannukakkur that were left over from that morning's breakfast. Grilla accepted the food greedily with an expression of delight upon her craggy and age-worn face. She started rifling through the goodies there and then, and Borgny seized upon that to pick up a broom that had been leaning against the wall in the corner, and used it like a lance to charge at the troll. Take your food and get out of here, Borgny commanded, jabbing with the broom to push Grilla back towards the door and outside again. Grilla grinned mischievously at her, but she allowed herself to be shepherded outside. Borgny knew that if she'd wanted to, she could have snatched the broom from her hands and snapped it in two like a toothpick, but she also knew that Grilla had got what she'd come for. You'll hear from me again, Grilla said. Then she turned her back and walked away into the night, her massive feet crunching the snow as her tree-trunk legs worked like pistons. Borgny heaved a sigh of relief. Her first thought was to call the police, but she quickly dismissed that idea. What could she possibly say to them? And what did she expect as an outcome? If she told them the truth, she'd be carted off to an asylum and her daughter would be placed into foster care. And so she did the only thing that she could do. She closed the front door, testing it as she did so to make sure that its hinges had held, then shot the bolts across and put the chain on. She looked at it for a few moments and then dragged an armchair through from the living room for good measure. She pushed it up against the door and then made a few more trips to weigh it down with sacks of flour, dumbbells from her home gym, and armfuls of books from the living room shelves. When she was finished, she turned around and almost leapt out of her skin. Paldus was awake, and she was standing behind her mother in her pyjamas and staring sleepily up at her. Jesus, Paldus, you scared me. I'm sorry, Mama. Come on, Borgny said, let's get you back to bed. Can I have another story? I think we've had enough stories for one night, Borgny said, leading her back through to her bedroom by the arm. She lifted her up and dropped her onto the bed, then pulled back the blanket and tucked her in. Now, go to sleep, Paldus. Be a good girl or I'll give you to Grilla. Paldus shuddered and said nothing. Borgny kissed her on the top of the head and swept her hair from her eyes, then headed back out to the kitchen, turning the lights off and closing the door behind her. She poured herself a shot of whiskey and downed it, savouring the fire as it worked its way down her esophagus. Then she poured and drank another one. It had been a long day, and she never had finished the story she'd been working on. That night, as she drifted in and out of sleep, she had fever dreams of faces at windows and old superstitions. She woke up sweating, took another long slug of whiskey from the bottle that she'd left on her bedside table, then dropped off again. She woke one final time when the clock in the living room chimed 4 a.m. She fluffed up her pillow and rolled over, pushing her face into the cool fabric and pressing her eyes together. Then they shot open. She'd heard something. She was sure she had. Alright, that was the final part of Grilla Comes to Sesfijur by myself, Dane Cobain. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Silverbacks with Chaotic Harmony.
Be a thief if you feel like. Be the falcon to your side. Be the time in the infinite. In one and only light. Be the water turned into wine. Be the hero they vilify. Come on, Lord, come on. Be the writer of your own life. Be the author, don't be shy. Be the flirt if you fly. Be your Be a gambler, roll the dice. Come on, Lord, come on. Be the writer of your own life. Be the author, don't be shy. See your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul. I see your soul and a smile at the back of me. I see your soul.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined by this week's guest, who is author Dana Deltrum. Okay, so the first question is one I asked everybody, which is, what was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
Yeah, I absolutely have loved reading The Boy, not that you can see it, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And I have to say, I read it before I knew that Charlie Mackesy had won the BAFTAs and all of his awards. I happened to see it on socials that he had won it, but I'd already read it thanks to my nieces who have a book themselves. So I decided that I wanted a book for myself to read as well. I have absolutely loved that book. Loved it.
Awesome. Cool. And we're going to talk a lot about books today. And I guess the natural place to start is if you can introduce who is Dana Deltrum and what can you tell us about her?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. Dana Deltrum is my alter ego. She would be considered probably the sassy side of me, and she likes to have fun. I like how I'm calling her she now. But yeah, just in case you're going to ask why I've chosen a pen name, it was really strategic and specific because I'm very mindful that I come from, in my previous business, a serious bricks and mortar property business. And so I wanted to make sure that there was a true distinction within the branding of Dana Deltrum and me. So that's why I've chosen that. Yeah, so Dana, she's funny. She's an absolute comedy, stand-up comedy tragic, which is absolutely, totally me. Yeah, so that's who Dana Deltrum is.
Awesome, cool. And we're going to talk about some comedy later on as well. But sure. I know one of the things that Dana really likes is she's a big fan of pistachios. And I know I'm saying it wrong. So I wondered if you could teach me how to pronounce it. Let me know what it is about pistachio that you love so much. And also, why does it make such great ice cream?
Really good questions. So my background is Italian. Australian Italian. You've probably heard the Australian accent, so it's Australian Italian for the viewers. And so we call it in our family pistacchio. There's two C's in it, so we call it pistacchio. It's pistacchio. Now, as far as pistachio ice cream goes, let's talk about pistachios first, hey? So as a nut, it's got a creamy flavour and texture to it, but it also has a sweetness. So I love eating them on their own. I think you do too, though, Dane, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think I told you I have a habit of, and I'm not doing it now. You can see my hands, but during Zoom calls, I used to sit there unshelling them because it was like my little treat. So at the end of the call, I've got a little pile of them ready to go for.
Yeah, I do the same. And I've started having them at night because pistachios are actually really good for sleep, apparently. So Dr. Google says. So I've been having them at night and absolutely love them. Now, as far as the ice cream is concerned, a good pistachio icing, and so here's a family theory as well. we can tell if a gelateria or an ice cream shop is a good one if they have a good pistachio ice cream. So if they don't have a good pistachio one, sorry, big no. And the pistachio ice cream needs to have the ice cream plus real pistachio nuts in it as well.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, awesome. And so talking about comedy, I mean, I guess it would be a good place for you to mention what's the current book that you've got out, and because I know you're working on another one as well, so maybe let us know a little bit about your plans there.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So the current book that is currently out on Amazon is called Our Favorite Comedians, My Obsession with the Comedians I Love. It's a group of 6 comedians that really were my childhood comedians. I've done a good mix of the 6, but yeah, that's what I've got going at the moment. And I've got another comedians too coming out probably when this is published around May.
Cool, awesome. And of all the comedians you featured, if you had to pick just one as your favorite, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I've thought long and hard about this one. Actually, no, I haven't, because it's true. I have been obsessed with Jim Carrey pretty much from the moment he turned up on the stage. And it started out with his physicality first. I'm very mindful that he reminded me of Jerry Lewis. And as a kid, my family would watch on a Sunday, we would watch Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. And so I'm very mindful that I'm showing my age, aren't I? I'm very mindful that Jim Carrey and Jerry Lewis are very similar. And in fact, Jim Carrey talks about that. So it was initially his physicality. What really drew me in was the depth of the guy. I love the other side of him, that human side that I've seen as far as his visualizations, how he meditates, that he seems to have a real groundedness about him, his performances and the wideness of the scope of what he has done outside of comedy. I find that really cool. And I'll give you a fun fact. Apparently he's here in Melbourne at the moment. In fact, he is. He's filming here in Melbourne, Australia at the moment. So
awesome.
I might meet him. Who knows? I don't think so. But anyway, it'd be great.
Yeah, if you do, you'll have to give him a copy of the book.
Oh, don't you think? Get him to sign it. How cool would that be?
It'd be amazing. Awesome. And in terms of comedians, like what is it then that you think makes a good comedian? Do you think it is like that sort of versatility, adaptability, and being able to do, I guess, different kinds of comedy as well?
Yeah, I do. I think what I love about comedians is that they tap in not only to their own humanness, but they're also tapping into what's going on in society globally. I mean, God, Ricky Gervais would pretty much, he's the epitome of that. But I think they all are. Like in the book, I've also got Whoopi Goldberg there, and the things that she has to say about feminism, it's really quite fascinating how all of these comedians bring to the table their experiences and their observation. I really think that helps us to connect to them in a different way. And we also get to see ourselves in their faults. Yeah?
Yeah. Awesome. And so I wondered as well, because I know on your social media you've asked people to share, their own favorite comedians. You do that on your email list as well. Who are some of the ones that people have written into you about?
Yeah, okay. For Australians, the most popular one has been Kitty Flanagan. And interestingly enough, Kitty Flanagan actually lives in my suburb. So I see her quite frequently with her Havanese dogs. She's a very smart, witty woman, really smart and witty. Ricky Gervais has come up quite regularly as well. John Cleese. Oh my gosh, now he is a total dynamo, isn't he? So yeah. John Cleese has come up as well. Yeah. It's been really diverse, actually. And there've been comedians that I haven't followed extensively or exclusively. So it's been really cool to actually go and check those out as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Great excuse to watch some comedy and call it work.
How good is YouTube, don't you think?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I just dig deep, dive in, and yeah, there's so much.
Awesome. Cool. And how have you found it going from your first book to the second? Has it been easier? Has it been more difficult? What are some of the kind of things that you've learned along the way that you've applied?
So much easier. I'm so much easier. I mean, the first time that you do anything is always a challenge, I believe. Well, it certainly is my experience. And there's that fear of failure. Holy crap, can I actually really do this? The second time round, you already have almost that muscle memory, but also you know where to go. Like, I've got a really great team that support me now, from my mentors to friends to I have an accountability partner, Sandra, and she and I work together really well. So it's been a really cool ride this time around. Really cool. I've actually really enjoyed it. So much so that I'm getting Comedians 3 ready, because I'm really, I'm liking the flow of it.
Yeah, and strike while the iron's hot kind of thing as well.
Totally, absolutely.
Cool. And you mentioned your mentors, and I wanted to ask you about that. Who have been your mentors along the journey?
Oh, man, have you got 20 minutes? No. Okay, let's do it nice and quick. But John Gabrielle is my life coach, and he was the one who actually encouraged me to explore my creativity. And I will be forever grateful for that. I think I've always been a budding writer. I've always journaled, etc. But he just helped me to concrete and solidify where I actually wanted to be in this part of my life. As far as creative mentors are concerned, I mean, Dane, number one, you mentioned my socials, and holy moly crap, it's true. The way that you have assisted me with those socials and with the newsletter, it's been cool. It's been just so cool for me. And I literally feel like I've been standing on the shoulders of giants. I know that I've said that to you before. I've had a series of coaches that I've worked really well with that have helped me and held my hand every step of the way, including CJ Anaya, who's a writer in her own right. There's also been Corey Rupe. In fact, I think these guys have been on your show before.
They have, yeah.
They've been really cool. Janet Brown, Corey Rupe. Oh, gosh, there's a whole group of them. But, yeah. And what I love about all of you guys, respectively, is that you have this immense giving, for one, and an incredible wealth of knowledge, which has just been invaluable to me moving through this new journey of publishing. Yeah.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with author Dana Deltrum, and this is Hogarth's Wolf with Ms. Monagle and I.
Become one. To become one. And that's me, and that's you. Become one. As one. To become one. Become one. Become one. It's me and it's you. Become one. as one. Me and you.
That was Ms. Monagle and I by Hogarth's Wolf. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time now for me to be rejoining conversation by this week's guest, who is author Dana Deltrum. Awesome, cool. And you mentioned as well, I guess it's kind of quite different for you going from that sort of bricks and mortar job that you had before to now, living on your wits, living on your creativity. So I guess that's been quite a change for you, right?
Oh man, it really has. It's been a ride. Seriously, Dane, it's been such a ride. And at the same time, I love being in the creative space. What has also happened for me is last year I started painting. I haven't painted since I was a kid, and I've been painting and sitting in that creative space. It's been such an unshedding of years of corporate life.
Yeah.
I feel really grateful, really grateful.
Awesome, cool. And we sort of touched upon some of the things you do to market. I wondered if you could tell us, how do you get the word out about your books?
Yep, thank you. So I have a website, and there's a newsletter attached to that. As far as socials are concerned, Facebook and Instagram. I also have started playing around with TikTok. So you and I are going to have a chat about TikTok further, because you're just a dynamo in that social media field. So yeah, those are the main areas that I hang out in.
Cool. And why should people sign up to your mailing list? What's in it for them? What can they expect?
Yeah, okay. So I have a series of posters, freebie cute posters. In fact, you might see them behind me. I'm sorry for the viewers who are listening to this, but they're really bright posters of each of the comedians with the quotes that are actually in my book. And they're really cool quotes as well. I've had lots of feedback about them, actually. You also get to sign up to my newsletter. The newsletter comes out on a monthly basis, and you'll get quirky information, quirky stuff that's going on for Dana Deltrum, as well as what's going on in the comedy world. Yeah.
Cool. And
wouldn't you want to sign up? Really?
Exactly, yeah. And you sort of mentioned there, or you touched upon it a bit, but what's the response been like so far? What have the things that people have said about the book's been?
Dane, can I say, I have been humbled, really and truly humbled. Let's face it, friends will always support you. So it's great when you have friends give you a ring and say, my goodness, you've done so well. This is fantastic. I love it. But when you actually get strangers who reach out, anyone who goes and has a look at my Amazon reviews will see there are people in there, I don't know who they are, and they are writing some of the coolest things. And here's the thing I love the most. There'll be comedians in the book, our favorite comedians, that people won't like. And I get that, totally get it. But when I receive an email that says, I wasn't into them, but you've turned me around, that is really, really cool.
Awesome. Cool. And I wanted to ask you about comedy. The thing you kind of touched on there is that I suppose comedy is subjective as well, and we all like different things. But comedy as a whole, it kind of unites people. And I wondered why you think it does that. What is it about comedy that brings people together?
I think we touched on it earlier. I think that what unites us in comedy is that we get to see our own humanity and our own failings and are able to laugh at that. And there's something about that brings a sense of belonging. And also in this day and age that we're in at the moment, we need something to laugh at with.
Yeah.
And I think that comedy does that so well. Now, Maya Angelou is not a comedian by any stretch of the imagination. But here's what I love about one of her stories, and I tell this all the time when I'm talking about me. As you age, gravity is not really that kind to you. Let's face it, it's just not. Things just start to droop. And Maya Angelou talks about how her boobs, as she's got older, they have drooped. And I look at mine and go, oh, yeah, I'm doing the same thing. And every morning I have a look to see, because they've got a race going on, these boobs. Which one can get down to my toes the fastest? Today, my right is winning. And I just love that as a uniting. I mean, yes, that's cool for chicks, and you get to understand that in that joke. But also for men, it's like, oh, yeah, I've seen my missus have a challenge with that. Or do you know what I mean? That's what I love about comedy. It does unite.
Yeah. It almost
my joke, by the way. Did you like that?
Very nice. Yeah. No, it's almost like I guess it like taps into like universal truths as well, you know, that, and I think maybe that's why it does unite people, because it goes beyond, you know, something like that example you gave. It goes beyond culture. It goes beyond you know, country boundaries, goes beyond religious boundaries. It's something that unites us all, and especially I think as you were kind of saying, in the world we live in today, when there seems to be so much divisiveness around, it's good to have something like comedy that can bring people together. Yeah.
So you said that way better than me. Do you want to write my next book with me?
I'll work with you on it. I'm sure we can do something. But and that builds into, because one of the questions I wanted to ask is like, do you go out of your way to like spread some joy with your work, or is that just, I put like one of Bob Ross's happy little accidents? Is that something, you know, is that joy just a byproduct of what you do, or is it something you actually actively set out to achieve?
Yeah, how good is Bob Ross? And I can guarantee with the painting I've been doing last year that I've had heaps of happy little accidents.
Yeah.
I have absolutely made it a point of shedding light. And I don't want to go all woo-woo about it, but I am very mindful that it is really, really easy to see the negativity that's out there and be sucked into it. So my philosophy and my view is I believe in mankind, I believe in each other, and I just want to spread as much laughter and light and pistachio ice cream as I can.
Delicious. Awesome. Cool. And talking about, again, you've come quite a long way in your journey. If you could go back and just talk to yourself on day one when you first decided, I'm going to do this, what would the biggest piece of advice be that you would give yourself?
Yeah. Trust myself, believe in my intuition, that my skill set is actually transferable, and that move faster. I could have done this a lot quicker if I had have actually trusted myself and my process. Yeah.
And I think that's a common thing amongst all writers. It's kind of, you know, when you start and you're staring there at like page 1 or whatever, it's a big commitment, and you kind of, especially for your first book, you have no idea, like, am I going to get to the end of this? I'm sure it's the same with other art forms. Like if you're doing a sculpture or something, you start and you're looking at it, and you're like, this is just a big hunk of stone. Like, I'm never going to finish this. And then you finally do, and you're like, oh, okay, well, now I've done it once, I can do it again. So I think that's really nice, a nice little piece of advice. So I wanted to ask you, like, what's the end goal for you? What does success look like for you?
Yeah. Such a good question. I want to continue to produce good, fun, entertainment books. With us, certainly there's an aspect of education, but it's about entertaining. Mm-hmm. And so that's one thing that I want to continue to do in my publishing career. I've already started playing around with fiction. I really love paranormal fantasy romance. So watch this space around that and contemporary romance. As an industry, I love being a part of this industry. So I see it certainly being something that not only helps me emotionally, but it's something that will certainly continue to give me the lifestyle that I have at the moment. And so, yeah, really grateful. And don't get me wrong, I'm well aware that this is not an overnight success situation, but it's something that if you're methodical around it, I'm very clear that this is like any business. It's a methodical pacing of yourself and producing good product that readers hopefully want to buy and read.
Awesome. Cool. And what would you say like sets you apart from other writers in the same space and writing similar kinds of books?
Yeah, when I was looking at the space, I see myself as being different in that it's not a full-blown, true, serious biography. What I do is there is certainly a biographical aspect to the books, over and above that, there is also my quirkiness and my take on it. There's my experiences in it. And, you know, my author bio says Dana thinks that she's funny.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I certainly bring a certain quirkiness to the way that I write.
Yeah. And I think that comes through in like your social media and stuff as well. And actually, that's probably a good thing in terms of if people come across you on social media first before having read one of your books, they're going to know before they pick up your book whether they're going to like it or not, because they know whether they like your social media, because it's kind of a reflection of your personality, which is quite hard for people to do.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's really cool feedback. It's me. It is actually me. Yeah. In all my quirkiness, but it is who I am. Yeah.
It's got to love it or hate it, but this is what you get, and kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's that idea, if you try and please everyone, you please no one. So you've kind of, you've got your niche in the marketplace. And I suppose that probably is what makes you different, is that a lot of the other authors are trying to please everybody, so they don't really have their own little niche.
And Dana, that is actually one of my mottos, is dare to be different.
Yeah.
And I like what you had to say. Like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
That's one of my things, one of my mottos. So I need to be true to myself, and like to think that there will be some people that find that attractive. And for those that don't, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just not part of your tribe, but that's okay. Find people that are,
Awesome. Cool. And the final question is sort of 2 in 1, and we've covered this a little bit, but just to go over it again. So what have you got planned next, and where can people follow you to stay up to date?
Sure. Thank you. So I've got Comedians 2 coming out May, and that's another series of 6. It'll always be a series of 6 comedians. Directly after that, I'm already working on Comedians 3, which is LGBTQI plus comedians specifically. My gosh, these comedians are extraordinary in their own right. I can be found at danadeltrum.com is my website. My socials are all Dana Deltrum. That's Facebook. We've already talked about this. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Cool.
Comedians.
Yeah. And check out the book while they're at it as well.
Oh, please. The book you can find at Amazon. Well done, you, Dane. Thank you. Amazon.com.
Big thank you to Dana Deltrum for joining me. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Glenda Benavides with Walking.
Walking my way down that dirty old road, and I'm walking my way down, and I lost my soul.
I sold my soul for the big bright lights. I signed my name, Lord, and it didn't feel so right. Nobody told me I would pay the price. Oh, yeah. And I sold my soul for fool's paradise. Oh, for the big life. Walking my way down that dirty old road. I'm walking my way down. I don't wanna go. I'm walking my way down for something I owe. And I'm walking my way down, and I don't wanna go. There's nothing to show. Listen up, he said this. Now time to pay. Ooh, always calling my name. There's no way out of this. This trouble you say. Oh, I played my cards, and there's no one to blame. The devil that won my soul in his con game. There's no one to blame. Walking my way down that dirty old road. I'm walking my way down that I don't wanna go. I'm walking my way down for something I owe. I'm walking my way down and I don't wanna go. No, that desert road. Walking my way down that dirty old road. Make it go, make it go. You know it's time to go. I don't wanna go. No, 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 no. And I'm walking. And you know what? You gotta leave the vibes.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wicken Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Ilk Shed now for this week's album review, courtesy of Twangling Jack Ford.
Neil Diamond, 20 Golden Greats. This is an album I bought in a charity shop, and I probably would not have bought a CD by Neil Diamond had I not found it browsing in charity shops or bargain bins. I am certainly not a fan. I think he tends to overdo his Neil Diamond voice beyond the point of self-parody, and he has a tendency to schmaltz and overproduction. He lost credibility for me and others like me when he became the housewife's favourite in the 80s. Cutting his hair and dropping the denim of his more rocky and very successful Hot August Night live album period in the 70s for Las Vegas tuxedos and rivaling Barry Manilow. But my thing is songwriting. I listen to songs, sometimes sung by great singers and sometimes by singers who would struggle to carry a tune in a wheelbarrow. It is songs and guitarists that make me buy records, because I like to write songs and play guitar. I know drummers who buy albums that I have no interest in because I'm not a drummer, and the same goes for bass players. The Neil Diamond song Crackling Rosie was a bit of a guilty pleasure for me when I was much younger. I bought the single. I loved the way that when you thought it had reached the chorus, it hadn't, because it went in a different direction that led to something else that might also have been a chorus. There is something that really appealed to me about that song, like nothing else he ever did. It even has a key change and a bar play out. Mostly he writes very obvious songs with sing-along choruses, and in the case of Sweet Caroline, sing-along musical interludes. He wrote some great songs that were covered by other artists. One of the few singles I bought before Crackling Rosie was another Neil Diamond song, I'm a Believer by the Monkees. A song I think is a contender for the best pop song of all time. He also wrote A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You, another song that journeys through key changes, chasing a chorus. And there's Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon by Urge Overkill, famous for being on the Pulp Fiction soundtrack. And there's The Boat That I Row by Lulu, Red Red Wine by UB40, and Kentucky Woman by Deep Purple. The thing is, I could criticise the artistic decisions taken in the making of these records, but if one comes on the car radio, I will have to sing along. Badly, even though he sings pretty much in my key. I will sing like Vic Reeves's bad club singer, exaggerating all the final syllables. I will turn up the volume and make embarrassing movements. It might even be a beautiful noise, though that is not included on Neil Diamond's 20 Golden Greats.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Dana Deltrum for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. We are repeating on Monday nights on Wickham Sound. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again. We're on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review if you enjoy the show. I would appreciate it. You can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain @wickhamsound.org.uk. I'm particularly keen to hear from poets, performers, musicians, people with local arts news, people with MP3s to share, potential guests, etc. Don't hesitate to get in touch. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune for this week, and this is Black and Blue by Esther Hayes. I'll catch you next week.
How do you hide a bruise when it's under your skin but constantly pushing through? Please tell me, how do you close off your heart when it's been beaten and torn apart? When is the time right to say I'm through? There's no point crying, there's nothing to do. Like a mirror shattered, I no longer have a clear view of you. And I am always turning, and I am always turning. Black and blue, black and blue. I'll say it louder, I'll say it louder. It's all thanks to you. It's all thanks to you. It's alright, darling, now I see the truth. The thoughts you've been hiding, the fear of wasted youth. I want you to know that I see the strain in your smiles. 'Cause you know this town was never ours. Isn't it funny how these things go? They're watching our cities die from miles below. You cut all of your ties to try to keep a hold. But honey, did you forget about me? How do you hide a bruise? I'm not the one who will lose. How do you hide a bruise? I'm not the one who'll turn black and